Kristin Reif with Phillip Morris International. Thanks for joining us on the Illinois Channel, coming to us from Washington, D.C., and talking to us about really an amazing story that's been so undercovered. And in the broad headline, I would say it involves illegal trade, and illegal trade coming not only into Illinois, but around the nation, but certainly impacting Illinois and Chicago. And we're talking about illegal human trafficking, illegal drugs, and you being with Phillip Morris, also illegal sales of cigarettes, which I was surprised to be told those sales represent a national security risk. And apparently because there is so much money involved in the sale of illegal sale of cigarettes, that is quick money for these gangs that engage in all these other illegal activities. If you could kind of expound a bit on that from your perspective, and maybe tell us a bit about what's new that Phillip Morris and others are doing to address these issues.
Yeah, no, you're exactly right, Terry. Thanks for having me to talk about this. So recently we've gotten together with several companies, including the Department of Homeland Security, state and local partners, to try to fight illegal trade of many forms. And the forum, as you mentioned, that I lead the effort on is really fighting against the counterfeit contraband of cigarettes globally, as well as here in the United States. Globally speaking, it's a $40 to $50 billion a year problem, so says the World Health Organization. You look at some of the U.S. government stats, and they'll tell you that it's $6 to $10 billion in tax loss here in our country. And you take it to the state level in a place like Illinois. The state of Illinois is losing about $150 million a year on smuggled and counterfeit cigarettes. So it's a massive problem. From our standpoint, we are focused on not only protecting our own supply chain and supporting law enforcement, but really banding together with some of these other groups you mentioned, other brand owners, other companies, and law enforcement, such as the Department of Homeland Security IPR Center, to really bring together a network of people to fight this illicit trade.
Yeah, let me bring up just a graphic that we have available here, and it mentions some of the things that you had talked about. That Illinois ranks 16th in tobacco smuggling, 9th in smuggled cigarette packs, 11th in tobacco revenues lost to the state, 151 million, which you just mentioned. And Kristin, you were just telling me off camera the differential, and one of the reasons that Illinois is basically, I would say, incentivizing some of this illegal activity by virtue of the difference between what Illinois and places like Chicago, the taxes they apply to a pack of cigarettes. I'm not a smoker, so I'm not as aware of this, and probably a lot of people aren't who are non-smokers. But can you give us the difference, say, between what the taxes are in a pack of cigarettes in Chicago versus, let's say, if you were buying it in somewhere in Missouri?
Yeah, no, I mean, you hit the nail on the head with what the driver of this issue is. It is the profit motive for criminals. And they see the difference between what a price of cigarettes costs in Chicago versus St. Louis, and it is just a deal they can't pass up at that point. So the tax alone, we're not talking about any of the additional either manufacturer cost, warehousing, distribution, retail. We're not talking about that. Just the tax alone in the state of Missouri is 17 cents per pack. The tax alone in the city of Chicago, if you add Illinois, Cook County, and city of Chicago taxes, it's $7.16 per pack. So if you take that and put it to scale, Terry, you end up with an opportunity that criminals have to fill up a tractor trailer in St. Louis, take it to the city of Chicago, and on genuine product they can make $4.2 million off of that one trip alone.
And that's amazing. And not only does it impact, the gangs getting $4 million just on one truckload, as you say, but there's a lot more than one truckload happening over the course of the year, and it's impacting also all the retailers, the store owners, the gas station people, who when people who are smokers go in, though they would normally pick up a legal pack of cigarettes, and now they're not. So it really has a number of people, and I would say all of us are impacted because we live in municipalities who aren't getting the tax revenues that they normally would. But also then we have, as we say, we're fueling these illegal gangs, and I've done some stories in the past. We talk about slavery in the American story of history, and we think of it as being something that happened 150 years ago. The sad fact is there is human slavery happening today, human trafficking, and it's happening in Illinois. It's happening in Chicago. People are shocked to hear that. And these illegal sales of cigarettes are those dollars that are going into the hands of, whether they're South American gangs coming in and operating in Chicago, Nigerian gangs, who are also using that money in trades of cocaine, trades of heroin. So this really is kind of an octopus issue with so many tentacles. I want the viewers to understand, this is not just about cigarettes and taxation on cigarettes. It's far more a factor of our daily lives than I think any of us have realized.
There's a convergence of all of these. It feels horrible to say commodities, but human beings are commodities in this. There's a convergence of these illegal activities, and whether it is knockoff cigarettes or smuggled smokes from one state to the other, or moving drugs or human beings, criminals just want to make money, and they are product agnostic. They will make it in any way they possibly can. So we have worked on cases, and I have personally, of cases of human trafficking using the same smuggling routes on the U.S. northern border with Canada. We have worked on cases of forced human labor, where they are forcing migrant workers to set up clandestine cigarette factories to produce counterfeits in the middle of the night. They're not allowed to leave until they've produced what they were told. Maybe they get paid, maybe they don't, but that is forced slavery at that point. These are some horrific crimes. And so it is not victimless. It's not just maybe getting a pack of cigarettes for a bit cheaper. It is something that is connected to this whole nefarious ecosystem.
I'm going to just read some of the information I've been given here, that Illinois ranks 10th in the United States in human trafficking cases. Since 2007, Illinois has had over 1,700 cases of human trafficking. In 2018, federal law enforcement in Illinois seized over $15 million in smuggled currency, the third most in the nation. And in 2018, Illinois reported the sixth most number of deaths from cocaine overdoses, with 771 fatalities. That's in 1 year. These are, I think, numbers that most people have never heard of in the story. Now, there is an effort by Phillip Morris and partners to do something about this. You have a website, usait.org, which you are engaged in this operation. Tell us, if you would, something about what's going on with this, and what is it you're doing to combat all this?
Yeah, absolutely. So at the beginning of the pandemic last year, we, along with several other companies, Merck Pharmaceuticals and the like, were sitting around talking with the Department of Homeland Security, and they were telling us that they were seeing counterfeit and fraudulent PPE. They were seeing criminals take advantage of fast-moving goods at ports because enforcement authorities and others were in such a hurry to get some of these personal protective equipment, essential materials to frontline workers, that criminals were actually smuggling drugs in some of these cargo shipments as well, because they knew they weren't being checked and getting fast passage. When we heard stories like this, several of us got together and thought, how do we help? How do we serve our country during this time? And we were really challenged by Homeland Security at the time to, hey, take your skill set, take what you do well, and apply it to this. One thing you do well is brand integrity. You guys chase bad guys to protect your own products. Now do that to protect critical products, PPE, and now into therapeutics and vaccines. And so that's how USAIT, or United to Safeguard America from Illegal Trade, that's how it really began a little over a year ago. And now the effort is expanded, where we are going into state and local level. We are providing education and resources to law enforcement in the form of training. We know, as we were just speaking earlier, these issues and these smuggling commodities, they are intertwined. And so we knew that it couldn't just be us doing it. It can't just be law enforcement doing it. But when we get together with the pharmaceutical industry and the apparel industry and law enforcement, that's really when we're creating a network to defeat a network.
I'm going to show here this is the website, and it says how illegal trade is growing. You can go on there, you can click on your state, and we see just an abundance of information on there, more than what we can provide in the short run. But I think that this is something that so many people just haven't been aware of over time. And hopefully this interview will bring it to their attention, including not just the average viewer, but those not only in Illinois law enforcement, but those in the Illinois legislature, in the governor's office, because this is happening behind the scenes. And when we look at the tragedies, the horrific amount of violence happening, just over the 4th of July weekend in Chicago, making national news, of over 100 shootings, and I forget the actual count, but every weekend we have a massive amount of shootings. And this is not just isolated to those gang members. We have children being shot. One young student who just died from a stray bullet hitting him as he was on the train in Chicago from someone shooting their gun off, a gangbanger. This is too big of an issue for any of us, I would say, to ignore. And for, as you say, for any one law enforcement agency to deal with on their own, which is why we have the website and the effort that Phillip Morris is working with your partners, and which we're happy to bring to the attention of people. Kristin, you were telling me off camera that you have been working on this, though, for a number of years. Tell us a little bit of, I presume you didn't grow up thinking you were going to do this, and you're probably just from a normal background like most good people. And what kind of things have you learned? And you've been around the world on this. What are some of the things that you've learned? What are some of the shocking bits of information you've learned over the years that you've been working on this?
Yeah, no, I've learned a lot, and I have had some interesting experiences, not all of which I'm going to share with my mother on camera, but I've had the opportunity through this job and leading our anti-illicit trade efforts, working with law enforcement, which has been absolutely my honor to do it in this country and in others, to know that we have some of the most amazing, brave men and women in uniform who are fighting to keep us safe here and at embassies all over the world. And so what we are trying to do is truly help them be able to do their job better and keep us safe. And some of that comes down to, I'm coming at this with some very specific experience, very specific knowledge of my own business and my own industry, and how to make sure that that product is not part of the problem. So you mentioned some of the gang violence in Chicago over the weekend that absolutely made national news. When we think about that, I also think about it from a funding mechanism. That when people are moving one truckload of cigarettes that I mentioned, and they're making $4.2 million off of that, that's not money that's being donated to the church. That's money that's going to support those gangs, to buy more guns, to buy more bullets, to really create a bigger problem. And so we see that here in this country. We've also seen it, as I've mentioned to you before, we've seen it in places like Central America, where the market is flooded with counterfeit goods, whether it's cigarettes, whether it's counterfeit and fraudulent pharmaceuticals. These are a funding mechanism that are the lifeblood of these horrible organizations that are wreaking havoc. And so part of what I learned is if we are able to go back, we are able to dry up the funding of these groups, it makes it a heck of a lot harder for them to do damage.
We hope that this awareness is going to be a part of the solution. Do you reach out, can you give us just a little bit of, I mean, aside from the website, do you work with local law enforcement? What are some of the specific steps that Phillip Morris and its partners are doing to combat this?
Yep, so in addition to awareness, we, as you mentioned, we work with law enforcement at the state, federal, and even local level. In fact, Los Angeles County Sheriffs are a member of this organization, and we are bringing other partners on board in other states as well. Some of the partners we are with in the state of Illinois are a little bit more business focused, the Illinois Retail Merchants Association, Illinois Manufacturers Association. But our goal is to start having some of these conversations and bringing, to the extent possible, Illinois law enforcement aboard as well. We think that so much happens at that local level. That's where the cops know the neighborhood. That's where they know the problems. That's where they know the folks involved. And so for us to give them this kind of information, to give them the specific training on, hey, this is a genuine pack of cigarettes, or hey, this is the MO of the guys that we hear are moving the counterfeit pharmaceuticals. They moved it last month from Mexico into Los Angeles. We know it's coming this way. It's really key, I think, though, to speak with those local law enforcement folks to give them this information, because then they take that specific action and they're at the right level to do so.
I know you're coming to us from Washington. Have you worked at all with any of the committees on Capitol Hill, with some of the congressmen and senators? And if so, when you talk to them, what kind of reaction do you get from them?
Yeah, no, we certainly do indeed. We try to take that message there. It's hit and miss, I'll tell you, just to be honest. We work with some, especially those in border states who get it immediately, that they see this every day, and they understand that something needs to change and be done. The solutions, though, that some of them are open to, I think it's everything from true border security, boots on the ground, law enforcement, blocking and tackling, to then you have some folks in other states, a member of the Senate I'm thinking of, who's a medical doctor, who is a guy who says, I don't just want to treat the symptom, I want to treat the disease. And so a person like that says, let's go to places like Central America, let's dry up the supply of these illicit goods, whether it's cigarettes, pharmaceuticals, drugs, and let's take that money out of the hands of Las Maras, out of the cartels, and not let them get it here. Because when they come, they're not just bringing illicit cigarettes, they're bringing fentanyl, they're bringing the opioids as well.
Well, and that's the thing. We talk about fentanyl coming in. I was mentioning in another interview, I think it was around 2018 or so, there was 50,000 Americans died from fentanyl. And that's just one illicit drug coming in over the border. We talk about the border, and a lot of times this all gets swept up into the issue about immigration and all that.
Right.
We had a congresswoman from Michigan just yesterday, as we tape this, saying we ought to defund ICE, we ought to defund the Department of Homeland Security. And I think a lot of people, I would argue, need to be aware of the issues we're talking about. That when you talk about the border and control of the border, it is far more complicated and far more involved than just, should people from Central and South America be able to come into the United States. And I would also say, as we have just discussed, Chicago is a long way from the border, but it is on the front lines of being impacted by this illegal trade, whether, as you've made the point, it's illegal cigarette sales and the amount of money that goes into these gangs, which the DEA have talked about, and they are from around the world, Central America, South America, Nigeria, the heroin they're selling, the cocaine they're selling. All of this is impacting people, not just along the border, but in all of our communities, and not in Illinois, but it's really a national issue that I would say, I'm older than you, but when you go back to the 1960s, America wasn't being impacted like this. This is in the history of the country, a relatively new threat that we face. And it's good that law enforcement, but also our industries, such as Phillip Morris, are stepping up to say, what can we do by combining our resources to address the issue?
Yeah, no, thanks for that. I agree 100%. I'll go back to the idea that there is a convergence of smuggling of many things. And we have seen this on the U.S. southern border with Mexico, where one of the biggest illicit tobacco busts that ever occurred, law enforcement didn't just bust a couple truckloads of cigarettes. When they did that, they also found marijuana, cocaine, and fentanyl. And I will tell you right now, if somebody is caught smuggling one truckload of cigarettes, they're not going to prison for the rest of their lives, unfortunately. If they are caught smuggling a key of coke or kilo of fentanyl, they're going to prison forever, and they know that. These criminals are smart, and so they use a lesser sympathetic product, or a product that people see as a victimless crime, such as smuggling cigarettes. They use that to establish a route. They use that to corrupt a customs official in Mexico to allow it safe passage into the United States. And then what comes with it is the drugs. And so we're going to do our part to make sure that we're going after folks smuggling cigarettes, but we know it doesn't end there. We know that these are all interrelated issues. But if we do our part, and some of our partners do theirs, then I think we get to chipping away at this problem. There's going to be no silver bullet. I'm a little younger than you, but I'm not naive enough to think that there is a silver bullet in this. But if we are all doing our part, we're going to chip away at it little by little.
You know, I can hear in the back of my mind people saying, oh, this is like the war on drugs. You're never going to end that. And I might say, well, that's probably true. But we can maintain a acceptable level of civilized society if we combat it. I mean, we're not going to solve homes catching fire, but that doesn't mean that we shouldn't have a fire department. And the effort to combat problems is something that we need to address. Part of that is knowing what the problem is, which is why we're doing this interview, and we appreciate you joining us to do that. So I think I would encourage people to go to the website, and let me bring that address up once again, that they can get more information, they can reach out if they want, I presume reach out on there some way. I mean, they might be a lawmaker that want to get more information. Is there a way if somebody wants, would you be the person, if there was a lawmaker in Illinois and they wanted more information, would you be the person they should talk to, or how would they get more information?
Yep, so on the www.usait.org website, there are several state-level resources. So not only to get in touch with law enforcement if you believe that either you could be a victim of fraud, or if you see something funny, truly in a see something, say something type of reporting mechanism. There's also an email address and a contact point to talk to folks from the organization, and it may be me if it's appropriate for me to speak with them. I'm happy to do so. If it's one of our other partners, which we have phenomenal and really impressive national brands, like I mentioned, Merck and SAS, the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, as well as others. And so maybe it's more appropriate for them, but we're happy to help in any way. So please reach out, find more information, tell us how we can help, and we'll be there. Really focused on law enforcement. We were with the National Sheriff's Association a couple weeks ago, speaking to several hundred, if not 1,000 of their membership that were there. Like I said, we're partnered with the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, so we've been able to really leverage on that platform and their Global Intellectual Property Center to be able to push out this information. And now we're really going state by state. I mentioned Illinois Retail Merchants Association, Manufacturers Association, trying to really take advantage of some of these business relationships and put those to work. But I think what you mentioned is a great next step that could follow along shortly.
Well, Kristin Reif, we appreciate you joining us today, and hopefully we can follow up at some point as is necessary and find out what else you've been working on. But in the meantime, we'll let you go. Thanks for joining us, and have a great day, and we'll talk to you soon. Thanks for watching, and if you haven't already, please consider subscribing to our channel. And while you're at it, please leave us a comment. Thank you for watching.